to the next episode of the Live Your Spa Life show. Spa life is a lifestyle that accepts that accomplishment and harmony coexist. The Spa and Spa Life, the SPA, is for Seek Power Always, that power within you to do your deeper work in the world. I am so thrilled to introduce my special guest today, Shellie Nelson. And Shellie is a highly intuitive person who has been actively seeing energies and ghosts her whole life. You heard me right, energy and ghosts for all of her life. She has actively been, consciously on a spiritual path since she was 17. So I can't wait to hear the trajectory of this and her experiences in this and her ability to see the soul of people. So I'm really excited about this as well. And it's her desire to bring the greatness of people's soul into their their human awareness. Let's say that again, bringing the greatness of their soul into their human awareness and physical life. So Shellie, welcome to the show.
Hi, Diane. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
My pleasure. I am so thrilled. I love how, people interweave into their life, just the unseen and the seen, and to really stand into their power of that. And I see you as a real, positive disruptor in this, of really just stepping into this and acknowledging this. And, I want to kind of go into what was that for you as a child? Did you share that with anyone? What was your experience of this knowingness?
As a child, I didn't know that other people didn't see what I was seeing. Like when I was a young child, how would you? I think you don't know that you're different than other people. It just is what it is. And when I was about 8 years old, I had an experience where I was then aware that other people do not see what I see. And the experience was, I woke up in the middle of the night and I had a canopy bed when I was a child. It was really cute. Like my mom was an interior designer and it was a super cute room, for a little girl. But this canopy bed in the middle of the night, I'm seeing on the canopy, I'm seeing a woman laying on the top of the canopy, which is not physically possible. Right. Because it's just wire holding up fabric. And I'm seeing her head bob up and down through the canopy. And she looked terrifying to me. She looked, in my little girl's mind, I'm about 8, she looked like a witch to me. And she's wrinkly and she's laughing at me because I'm trying to yell. I'm trying to scream for my mom. And I can't get any sound out because I'm too terrified.
Wow.
When you're so scared and everything's clenched and tight and your voice is like, ah. And I'm trying to yell, no sound's coming out, and she's mocking me. She's going, oh, ah. Like, ha ha, you can't yell for help.
Wow.
I'm terrified. Finally, I get a sound out. I yell for my mom. My mom comes running in. She flips on the light. The woman's still there. And I'm saying to her, this woman. And she's like brushing the canopy, thinking it's dust, like I'm making it up.
Right.
And she's like, is she still there? I'm like, Mom, yes, I'm describing her. And she just takes a deep breath. She sits down and she says to me, is she still there? I'm like, she is. She's like, okay, I believe you.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is amazing. And she said, I don't see what you're seeing, but I believe that you see her. I believe there's no way you would make this up. Why would you?
Right.
And so she said, I don't know how to help you with this, but I will find people who can. And she did. And so in that moment, especially, I was aware, like I am seeing things that other people do not see. And my dad definitely did not see. Like he was not, like, he's somebody that I kept this from because it would have scared him, or it did scare him. And I ended up really learning to keep it to myself. And so there was this navigating seeing things and being scared a lot of the time as a child. And even sometimes feeling very bullied by that unseen world. And then eventually, as I got older, my mom did find people. And there were people who knew how to read energy or saw the unseen as well. And there was some help for me. But then as time went on, you know, as I grew up, I started learning about energy. I started taking workshops, even as a teenager, and along with my mother, and just discovering and learning at a really young age, you know, what this was all about. And eventually, over time, became empowered to be able to say no. Like, I say no to this, but then also I ended up learning that oftentimes when something is seeking, like showing itself to me, I've learned like it actually wants something, like it's looking to evolve, it's looking to grow, it's looking to expand, because that's who I am today. That's who my adult self is today. Not only do I help people with that, but also I'm helping people cross over all of the time.
Right. Right. Well, I love this so much, just the forward thinking of your mother, you know, the fact she's one of the few people in the stories along this line of, especially as a young child, of a parent really believing a young child that they're having this experience. I interviewed one of my dear soul sisters that had almost the direct opposite experience where, you know, she was told she was possessed type thing. And you know, that really, she learned to really shut down her abilities because of that whole sense of being punished actually for it. So, you know, the fact that you had that support early on, but also as a child discerning that maybe your dad wasn't as, you know, felt as safe around this as well. And I know that, you know, you've been facilitating, you know, workshops, you know, around this, you know, for over 22 years. So this is not like you just started doing this. This has been a lifelong, you know, quest of yours. And I'd love to hear more of how you have been utilizing your unique intuitive abilities to really help people transform their lives.
So for myself, in the work that I do with people, so it originally started off with me seeing energy, and then me even doing readings for people. And at the time when I was younger, it was angel readings. Angels were really popular, not that they're not now, but like that language of angels 20 years ago was like quite something. And then for me, it eventually evolved to where it was about the soul. I didn't want the go-between. I was like feeling that the angels were the go-between. Or even sometimes people can become codependent on people or even spirits, of where they can become codependent with angels or guides. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go directly to where a person was whole and connected to source. And so that led me to soul, conversations about soul, and helping people really embody their soul and live who they really are, who they came to be. I feel our soul is where we are connected to source and where we really hold the true essence of ourselves, and we bring that with us to really to embody, to bring it. We are alive for a reason. We're in a body for a reason, and to express all that we brought with us. And so I help people really connect with that and discover who they are versus who they've been conditioned to be.
I love the distinction on that, because, you know, there can be so many things from, you know, parents and schooling and society that really shape the way a person is, and you can get lost in who that is and who you are. And I love this kind of going directly to the source, right? To the soul on that. I think we have such a fascination as a culture around, you know, angels and guides and, you know, these messengers of the go-between. Do you think there's a bit of fear or intimidation in order for people to go, in essence, directly to the source? What do you think has led up to some of that?
That is such a great question. One thing I find is that even if people are in avoidance and they're seeking outside of themselves, I feel like in avoidance, what I mean by that is in avoidance of their own power. And kind of a turning away from or disowning their power, or that it could even be them that is so wise, that is so brilliant, that is so amazing, that is that connected. And it is that when we decide to no longer seek outside of ourselves and actually go within and connect to our connection to source, it opens up so much. And there is a lot that happens. I mean, there's a lot for people to look at. And so I understand and have compassion for the avoidance that happens, because we then have to go through, I feel, a lot of letting go of who we're not, a lot of letting go of the patterns that give our power away to other people, give our power away to the unseen world, give our power away in one way or another. But what's amazing, as I've found with people, is that when we stop giving our power away in that way or in any way, we discover our own voice, we discover how connected we actually are to our intuition, and that it's always there. And people then open up to the amazing life that they get to live and become a creator of their own reality, versus dependent on input or dependent on somebody to point out the direction for them. They get to see, oh, I actually have so much knowing, and if I follow that, life gets magical.
Oh, I love this conversation so much. And, you know, I hope for our listeners, I hope you're leaning in right now as we're having this conversation, because, you know, I've talked a lot about power, and that's such a trigger word for people, because when people think of power, a lot of times they think of the misuse of power and, you know, how that is in the world. And, you know, that's from power that's outside of you. So I really do love the reframe. And I always say, you know, your true power is within you. And to really acknowledge that and come from that and be sourced from that is a really different experience of true power versus these false illusions of powers, of things that happen outside of us. And I love how you talk about knowing, because I think that there's so much people that are seeking knowledge. It's like more information with all the things that are out there. And do you agree that we really don't need more knowledge, that really it's more access to our knowing, that we really have that wisdom within us? And if we tapped into more of that, we really wouldn't have to access more knowledge.
Yes. I think there comes a point when we get to stop seeking and we get to rest into ourselves. And it's like counterintuitive to what we've been trained to think through the educational system. You need one more certificate, you need this education, you need to prove yourself.
Right.
And you need to prove who you are in order for people to accept you. And it's actually like that only goes so far. Like, yes, be educated. Yes, be informed. And there is no lack of information. We have access to abundant information. And at some point, it's time to stop and come center and sit within yourself, and then access from there. And I find I personally do what I call soul journaling every day. And even if it's 5 minutes, I don't always make a big to-do about it, because we don't always have time. I don't always have time. But I take at least 5 minutes and I sit with myself. I deliberately gather my energy. I come center. And what that means is I imagine a pillar of light at the center of my body, and breathe in through my nose, out through my mouth, and I deliberately come home to myself, sit into my center, sit into my soul space, where I then am my soul. And then from that place, I start to journal. And it looks like this. It's actually dialogue. Because some people will sit and wait for information and think, I'm getting nothing. I've heard that a lot. People are like, I'm not getting anything. I'm like, well, have you started the conversation? Just like with a person. If we don't start the conversation, oftentimes we are just looking at each other and nothing's happening. And so I always start the conversation and I write down soul, ... And I'm ready for soul to talk to me and for me to, and I'm like, what is it that I get to see and to know today? What is the perspective that I get to take today that I might not have thought of? And so then I will start to see or start to receive information, and it comes through like what feels like your imagination, because intuition and imagination travel through the same channels in the mind. And so it will always feel like you're making it up, always. And so I've had people say that all the time. I swear I'm just making all this up. I'm like, awesome, because we are always making it all up. Every bit of it, we're making it up. And so, yes, it's like, it is going to feel like your imagination. And yes, in a way you are making it up, but so what? It's like the more I feel we strengthen that muscle and dialogue with ourselves in that way, it's a choice. It's a choice to access power in a new way that has nothing to do with power over. It's actually, it's like choosing to come from that place where it is a love space. It's choosing to love yourself that much, to hold yourself in high regard, to really like, okay, I'm going to take this time every day, even if it's 5 minutes.
Yes. So many pearls of wisdom in this. And, I know a lot of times our listeners are driving and maybe, kind of miss some of these nuggets. And I like to just kind of land this back. I love the intertwining between imagination and intuition, to really have them on the same path, because there is a sense where people can sometimes feel, I've felt this where, am I just making this up? Did I really hear that? Is that, really my truth type thing? And I love that sense of being active, this active writing with this. One of the things I used to do the same thing where I would sit in silence and it'd be like, nothing, chirp, chirp. Like I'm not getting any kind of intuition. I'm like, okay, what am I doing wrong here per se, right? And when I was introduced to this whole active, writing and engaging, that was where I was getting some amazing messages. And I alternate between, sometimes I put either Lord, or sometimes I have the word truth. Truth, what is the message that you have for me? Like whatever those particular words are, it's amazing some of the things that come out of that. And I know for myself, sometimes some of the messages have been like, be still, like do nothing, right? And there's that part of me that's like, what? How does that move me forward? And but really being with that and really looking at what does that actually mean to have those kind of experiences. What's some of the feedback you've had in doing that, either with yourself or with some of your clients, in interpreting some of those messages or living into those or shifting their state of being as being part of that active dialogue?
I even sometimes, if somebody's in a state of fear, I often have invited them to, because if you're in a state of fear or even logic, like if your brain is really trying to chew on something and understand it, like just give that a voice for a moment, or give fear a voice for a moment, and let yourself dialogue actually with the fear that you're in. And like it will feel like craziness that you're writing on that page, but like just do it. Give it a voice, hear it out, because if we don't take the time to hear out even the part of ourselves, the mind, right? The ego part of ourselves that wants to keep things the same, because the ego will kick and scream and try to keep things status quo. That's its job.
Right.
And so giving even the logic or the ego a voice, and then drop into the soul space. Then drop in, because otherwise you might not ever get there.
Right.
And so like give fear its time, give logic, give the ego its time, and then sitting into the soul space, and that's when the wisdom can come through. My computer just did something. Anyway, but so I have found people where they said like, oh, that the message I got wasn't like, they felt it was a fearful message. I'm like, oh, right, that was probably fear talking. Or then even if they do get information, as you were asking, like they might feel afraid to actually take that next step, because they're expanding their reality. They're expanding their perception of themselves and what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
And that will always feel like a diving board feeling, the high dive feeling, where it's like, ooh, you feel that stir in your gut. And you're like, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I should. And even stepping into that expanded version of ourselves will often give us that feeling, and it can be mistaken for fear. And that's why I'm like, ooh, take a breath. Just take a breath. And it always comes in one step. And you might even see the 100th step. The 100th step and go, whoa, that's too big. I can't do it. It's like, well, back up. It's like, ask then, what is the first step that leads me to that bigger picture? Because it's never can we go from step right where we are right now to step 100. It's not possible. But you've got a glimpse of it. Your intuition, your soul, the bigger picture is speaking to you and showing itself to you. Yeah. And then the invitation is to ask, thank you. I see that bigger picture. What is the one step I can take right now? And it will always feel smaller than your ego is going to like. Always. It's like our mind wants that step 100 and go, ooh, that was glamorous. That was amazing. That vision's very big. Cool. I want that. It's like, great. But what's the one step that's going to organize energy, organize all that gets to come into being for you? Right now, what's the one step? And it will feel minuscule compared to that big vision. But when you take that one step, then the next one shows itself, then the next one, and eventually we get there. But then it's like there comes a time when I feel we can't always be in motion. And again, our minds, I'm guilty of this. I can judge myself or judge things if I'm not in motion. And that's where I love when you said the message can come of just be still. Because oftentimes we need that. We need to, I call that being in motion, like being in flow. So there's flow, but then there is always an ebb. Just like with nature, there's the tides come in, the tides come out. There's an ebb and there's a flow. And if we don't take time for the ebb, then we don't get to have the peace that brings us integration. So I feel that peace does more for us than any amount of doing can ever do.
Yes.
But if we give ourselves the peace, that's when energy gets to organize. And that comes from old training of mine when I was learning energy work and body work. There's something that's called a still point. And there's a still point like in acupressure, which is where I learned this. And so there's a still point where you hold that point and it will get erratic, like it will pulse in an erratic way because it fights for itself. And so it's like, just hold it, and then it eventually calms down and it's still. And in the still point, that's when energy's organizing. That's when everything's letting go, releasing, organizing on our behalf. And then what happens is a new pulse will start, a new rhythm, a rhythm that is in divine harmony, in this case with the health of the body. But the same goes like micro and macro in the bigger picture of our lives. If we allow ourselves that peace, we drop into it, energy will organize on our behalf. Energy will culminate and come into divine order for us. And then from there, wow, we can move forward in our greater essence, in our greater power, in the truth, more in the truth of who we are, because it's all come into being. But if we're like push, just keep moving, that's when things get dicey, because it's like we move into like adrenal fatigue, we move into stress, we move into I should be, and we move into proving. Like, just take a pause. It's all good.
Definitely. I so appreciate this nuance. What's coming to me is like there's this sense of being a ping pong versus peace. And it reminds me of the saying of, to experience the peace that transcends all understanding, right? And
Mm,
that, there's almost an instinctive pushback to that sense of stillness and peace, because I think that there's almost a guilt that culturally that happens that I'm not doing and pushing and making things happen, of not seeing that actually stillness and peace is something that's actually active, that it's something that when you're actually in that is the most powerful step to take, the thing to do. And I don't know if you're familiar with Clement Watt, but he actually has one of my favorite quotes where it's, take the first step, no more, no less, and the next step will be revealed.
yes.
And
So
so I
true.
love that with what you were saying, is that we do want that 100th step because we want the ta-da and the end and the result and all of that. But in the process, experiencing that peace and moving through is such a powerful place to be. And, which leads me to ask about, like, so do you tend to work with people that have already experienced their knowingness and have accessed their intuition, or is this something new to them? And how are you really supporting them to have that be more of their go-to and trusting it?
I think there's a mix. So there's a mix of people. I tend to, who's drawn to me, are people that are what I call not the newbies, like people where this isn't something that is a new concept to them, where usually the people that are drawn to me are quite intuitive themselves, but haven't sorted it out, that they are confused. They're not in their power when it comes to, they're kind of like getting thrown about like a leaf in the wind a lot of the time. And they may also, like, the people that are drawn to me are quite like successful in other areas of their lives. They often are, because I feel like we draw to ourselves who we are. And so like they're pretty high achieving people, Yeah. And so it's like they have done the other facet of their life, of where they have the degree, they have the certificates, they have been getting all the knowledge, and now they're like, oh, this isn't satisfying me. This is no longer fulfilling. Now what? And that now what is that deepening that gets to happen. That deepening where it's about, they might even have a lot of theory when it comes to intuition, or a lot of like mental theory about it. And it's like helping them sit into it and embody it and put it into actual practice. Because I feel that it's an experiential thing, like experience what brings the embodiment of it. Knowledge only goes so far.
Right.
And so we can have all the know-how that we want, and then what? And so like assisting them in actually deepening into what they've explored through their minds. And now it's time to bring it into a physical, actual experience of life. And so it's quite fun, it is quite fun getting to see people go, whoa, like this isn't just something that is talked about. Right. Because for them it was for a long time.
What comes to me is that when the mind becomes a menace, the soul becomes the solace.
Nice. So true.
I love that. Well, there's so many different terms we talked about that the question around evolution. I know you've got some thoughts around that. I'd love you to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I feel we are constantly evolving, that we are here to grow, expand, and evolve. And in our own evolution, with evolving comes death. And like we can't escape that. Because even if we look at nature, it's like it dies off even seasonally. It's like, yeah, there's always the expanding, the growing, the change of self. And as we grow and expand and have a change of self, there will always come about a feeling, and the mind is in service to us. The mind will often question, am I dying? And that feeling of death comes in, and people often misinterpret it. And I have found, because I'm a active evolver, that I have visited the energy of death, or I feel it has visited me many, many times. I have made friends with it. And when it comes and I feel that, I'm like, this is in service of me, this thought that I'm having. And it's nothing to take too seriously. Yes, if you are physically feeling something, go get yourself checked out, like a doctor. But that feeling in your mind, or that thought in your mind of, am I dying? And it's something is dying. And so to shift the conversation and ask internally, what is dying? And what is dying is most likely the smaller version of yourself, meaning the limited version of yourself. And that's when we get to welcome that conversation versus resist it. If we resist it, oh man, I've had so many people where they say, oh my God, I feel like I'm dying. I'm like, right, because death is present. Yeah. Welcome it, embrace it. And my husband, Jim, has this, I'm just seeing it right now in my mind. He has this piece of art on his wall that says, find what you love and let it kill you. I'm not remembering whose quote that is. Yeah. But it's like, as we move into loving our life more, getting to expand into our limitless self, we are expanding into the unknown, and what once was is dying. We must say goodbye to, we must shed that past self. And I feel it's better if we are active in the experience of what's happening versus looking the other way. If we actually are active in that conversation of what wants to die, and grieve it, and let her go, let that past version go, and let myself then emerge into, because everything takes up energetic space. And that past self, that identity, is taking up space. And when I can let her go, that's when I can emerge, because that's when I make energetic space and room for the new that wants to come into being.
Right. This is such a powerful beingness, because sometimes, people think of death as being such a negativity, but I also see that, I think that particularly, maybe more well-known deaths, how they can ripple throughout the culture. And it has a thing where people are now questioning what's happening in their life and how they can look at things differently. And we can see that a lot of times a death close to us, or one that feels close to us, can either be something that we can expand and grow and have more awareness of where you want to go, or you can be stuck in that energy. Like you said, there's more of the resistance because you're not allowing to let go of that either lesser self or something that is no longer working. So I love this, being able to really utilize the death energy as a way to grow.
Yeah. And it can be challenging at first because I feel it's frightening for people.
I can see that.
Yeah, it can be quite frightening. And one thing I know is that if it's present, it's meant to serve you.
Yes.
And to see it as it's here for you, it's here to support you, versus take you on a downward spiral. Like, what if it got to take you on an upward spiral instead? And to actually take a breath and embrace it. And I invite, I like to have conversation, dialogue on paper, and have a conversation with it and thank it. And oh yes, when we have impactful experiences where a loved one dies, or even in the public, someone has died, and how that can shape us. I feel it is, if it does impact us heavily, it's that it's calling us forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's not calling us into sadness. It's not calling us into, like, yes, there's grief, but then it will call us forward into how it is we get to live. And then I feel then when we move past this death energy, life itself starts to reflect us back to us. So I feel our environment, nature will reflect you back to you. What is your divine essence? What is your soul? What does get to be lived by you? And it will call you forward, especially if you let it.
Yes. Well, I love the speaking to like environments, because our environments are so powerful. And so one of the questions I love asking my guests is that, we have a different experience in our environments of our bedroom versus our office versus our kitchen. So what is your favorite room in your home and why?
My favorite room probably is my office. And like there's other sacred spaces. I have been very deliberate to craft my space, kind of all the spaces, to where I bring in things that reflect me back to me. And so my office, definitely, as I look around, I have things here that reflect my visionary self back to me, because that's who I am. That's the work that I do, is I am a soul seer, and I'm seeing energy, and all of it reflects that back to me and holds space for me. And I feel that even in like all around my home, there are items and pieces that reflect that back to me, that reflect that visionary self, my strong, empowered self back to me. And they're like energy anchors in a way that like always are in support of me. And definitely my office space is that for sure.
Yes. Well, I see that in just the picture behind you. And it's one of the first things I noticed when you came on. It's just like the brightness of the flower, and the colors are such in alignment with you, and just the light that comes of the flower. I mean, there's just such a reflection that is your energy and what you have in your space and what you've created in your space. So I appreciate those congruencies that we have that's in our space that actually reflects that and what that looks like. And, I know along the line of our path of choosing a conscious life, and especially when we're talking about power, there's times where we can feel disempowered. And, sometimes that disempowerment allows us to then, access that and have it be a source of power. So you mentioned about how you have at times felt bullied by the unseen. I'd love for you to talk about, boundaries around that, and how you went from a place of that feeling disempowering and how you were able to come through that and actually stand in your power.
So that's a great question. For me, because I am a seer, like I see energy. And so as I am seeing, it's more than a feeling. I know some people are more empathic and they feel energy, but for myself, as I am seeing something that could look quite terrifying, I have learned to see the light within it. And so even when I connect with a person, or I connect with the soul of somebody, I am seeing them in their wholeness, and I'm seeing the light within them. And then the same goes for an entity, something in the outside world, or even someone that could appear threatening to me. It's like, I don't buy it for a second. I'm like, I'm going to look at you, and I'm going to see the light within you, even if it is just a speck. Even if that's
distinction.
Even if that's all I can even get to, is just a teeny speck. It's like, I'm going to focus right there. And I actually bring my breath to it. And so I will focus on that speck, and I will bring my breath to it and breathe with that light, and it begins to expand and expand and expand to where I am actually watching that being, that energetic being in front of me, evolve right before my eyes. Because it's like, it starts to go, whoa, I am sensing the light within myself. I am becoming this light as well. And it's like, I've often heard them say, what's happening? What's happening? I'm like, you're coming home to yourself. You're actually remembering who you really are. And then the same goes with people. It's like, I have focused on somebody and I just breathe with the light within them, especially somebody that could appear threatening to me. Right. It's like, I'm going to focus on the light within you, even if it's just a speck. That's all I can get to, is like, because my mind's going, you fucker. Oh, excuse me, I have to watch my language. But it's like, my mind wants to go.
Different entities.
Right? Like, oh no, and it's like, no, actually, like, just breathe. Just breathe, focus on the light that's there. And then, oh my goodness, a shift happens. Yeah. And almost like the person shakes their head and it's like, they might just walk away. Mm-hmm. Or they might actually start to extend kindness. I've watched that shift happen many times where it's like, whoa, look at that softness happening. Look at that shift. I've had this same experience where I've had a client bring their husband or their spouse that doesn't want to be there, that never wanted to come to the session, but feels forced into coming, and they're very resistant. And I don't like this. I'm just here to prove you wrong. And I'm like, my first thing is I always say to them, I love a skeptic. I think that's great, because I do think it's great. I think it's great to question. I think it's great to actually be skeptical. And then it's like, let ourselves from that place see what is true versus staying in resistance. But the same thing, as I breathe with that person and I breathe with the resistance, seeing the resistance in them, breathe with the light within them, they start to soften and shift and become more receptive. And so, yeah, to me, that has been my gateway to, like, it allows me to shift out of any fear that I have going on. It shifts the perspective I'm in immediately. It's like, what if I just focus on the light here and just keep my focus there? Take some discipline.
Yeah. Well, I love it. Well, and I know that our listeners are going to want to stay connected with you. And I know that you have a gift that they can get access to. If you can share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I have an ebook called The 5 Soul Superpowers. And you can access that through my website, shellienelson.com. And it's SHELLIENELSON.com. And when you're there, on the very first page, you can scroll down and access that ebook. And Perfect. It helps you discover, like, what your soul superpower is, kind of where you are most powerful, where you can show up, where you might be hiding in your life, and helps to help you gain more access to yourself in that way.
That is perfect. I love that. Well, we could be talking all afternoon. I love this conversation. I love your wisdom and what you're sharing. Do you have any final thoughts for our audience?
Just the invitation. Just the invitation to take that time to come out of the mind, take that time out of the busyness, and to breathe. Like, actually just take a breath, sit into yourself, and connect into what I call your soul space. And even if you think you're not doing it, you cannot do it wrong. It's even through your intention to do it, actually you are doing it. So it's just something that you can strengthen over time, but it's an invitation to take that time, that even if it's for 2 minutes.
Perfect. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Shellie, for being here and sharing, your brilliance and showing up fully of who you are. You wear it in every aspect of your being, and I just appreciate you being here. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Diane. Such a pleasure. Good to connect.
You got it. And to our listeners, we want to thank you so much for, your most important asset is your time. And we so appreciate your spending your time here with us. And one of the things that you can do to help, expand these kind of conversations about, people standing in their power, moving through the things that are challenging and really stepping up to be that bigger person that you are here in the world, is please, subscribe to the show. So, when shows are coming up, to rate and review. Believe it or not, that actually does make a big difference in the reach of getting it out there. So we'd love to hear your comments, and make sure that you tag both Shellie and myself, because we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have and to extend the conversation beyond today. So until we connect again, live your spa life. Bye for now. Bye-bye.